There was a time, chosen one, when you questioned your place in the world, when your power stirred beneath the surface like thunderclouds before a storm, heavy with knowing but silent with restraint. You were not yet who you are now. You walked with caution, spoke with guarded tones, and held your energy in check, unsure of whether the world was ready to meet the real you, or whether you were ready to release it. But even then, the seed was present. Even then, there was something ancient breathing inside your bones, whispering, "There's more to you than what they see." And now that whisper has become a presence, a force not loud but unmistakably strong. You no longer feel the need to be approved, chosen, explained, or measured. You no longer wonder if you're enough. You know that what flows from you is not something you need to perform. You have become it. You've stepped into that sacred state where your presence speaks more powerfully than your words ever could. People don't always understand it. They may not even be able to articulate it, but they feel it. They respond to it. And that response is not rooted in admiration. It's rooted in recognition. You do not sparkle. You anchor. You are not just seen. You are sensed. And that shift didn't happen overnight. It came through inner death, through silent wars, through heartbreaks that tore the illusion of who you thought you needed to be. You were refined not by ease, but by fire. Not by flattery, but by seasons where no one clapped, and yet you rose anyway. You no longer beg the world to understand you. Now you simply stand, and the world must choose whether to meet you there or move out of the way. You've become the quiet eye in the middle of chaos. You've become the steady breath in a room full of shallow inhaling. You've become the space where others remember how to be human, and that, chosen one, is your treasure. You did not become valuable because someone said so. You became valuable because you became whole, because you returned to yourself without apology. And now you walk not with arrogance, but with certainty. Not to impress, but to express. Not to dominate, but to demonstrate what healed energy feels like. This is the becoming, and yet it is only the beginning. There is a difference between a man who is loud and a man who is anchored. The former demands space, the latter creates it. Chosen one, you have become the sanctuary others didn't know they were searching for. You are no longer perceived merely by the way you speak, but by the way people feel when you enter. Something shifts, the temperature stills, the noise in their minds softens, not because of what you say, but because of what you are. The women around you do not gather in your orbit out of infatuation. They feel a resonance, a sacred stillness. You are not just physically present, you are spiritually available. You listen beyond words, you respond beyond logic, and most of all, you see beyond appearances. You see the woman behind the mask, the sorrow behind the smile, the flame behind the fear. And in a world that teaches women to armor themselves, your presence tells them it's finally safe to disarm. They don't have to shrink to be accepted. They don't have to fight to be heard. Around you, they are allowed to simply exist. And in that freedom, healing begins. Not because you fix them, not because you try to lead them, but because your calm becomes contagious. Your rootedness gives them permission to return to their center. You are not their savior. You are the echo of what's possible when a man chooses wholeness over performance. You are not worshipped, but you are deeply trusted. You do not steal the spotlight, but you illuminate the room. And more importantly, you never confuse attention with intimacy. You hold space. You witness without needing to conquer. And because of that, women feel what they rarely get to feel in this world: safe, worthy, unjudged. You have become the mirror they didn't expect, the one that doesn't distort but reflects them back in truth. You don't offer fantasy, you offer reality, and you do it with love. You don't offer promises, you offer presence, and that presence is worth more than any vow. You are not merely a man, you have become the reminder that peace can live in a masculine form, that protection does not require possession, that love can be fierce without being controlling, that strength can be soft without losing its edge. This is what you've become, chosen one. Not a destination, not a title, but a place, a sanctuary. A presence others carry with them long after you've gone, wondering how they ever felt safe before they met you. Chosen one, the world around you has grown louder. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, validated. People rush to speak, to be first, to be right. But you do not race for attention. You radiate it. You no longer need to raise your voice. You no longer need to prove your value, because your silence now carries more weight than most people's screams. You've entered that rare vibration where the words you don't say change people more than the ones you do. There's something in your silence that speaks to the core of others. A woman could sit beside you for a moment and suddenly remember who she is. Not because you told her, but because in your presence, all the noise she built to protect herself no longer feels necessary. You are not an escape, you are a return. And that return is disorienting at first, because the world has taught her to expect men who take, men who want, men who measure. But you require nothing, and that lack of need has become your power. You don't crave control, you don't thirst for praise. Your desire flows from something deeper, witnessing without binding. You do not dominate conversations, you transform atmospheres. You are no longer addicted to being understood. You have become fluent in the language of energy, and so you understand things most never will. And when others leave your presence, they notice the difference, not just in you, but in themselves. Suddenly, they question the voices they've been listening to. They wonder if the performance they've been putting on for the world is even necessary. Because something about you reminded them that their real self is not too much, not too soft, not too complex. You've created space where masks are no longer needed. And in doing so, you've become unforgettable. Not because you left a mark of noise, but because you removed the static. You cleared the room of pretense simply by being real. And now, even when you're gone, your silence echoes. Even when you don't speak, your energy says, "Be who you are. I will not break." And that, chosen one, is the kind of presence that doesn't just change people, it frees them. Honor is a word spoken often, but lived rarely. And yet, chosen one, you've made it your foundation, not because it's trendy or romantic, but because it is the core of your energy. You live with a quiet reverence for life, for womanhood, for the sacred nature of connection. And in a world where many are taught to extract, to conquer, to own, you have chosen to witness, to respect, to uplift. You do not flatter to manipulate. You do not touch to claim. Your presence is not a performance, it is a covenant. When you look at someone, you do not see an object to impress or possess. You see a soul to reverence. And that gaze alone disarms the entire defense system built by those who've been disappointed, violated, forgotten. You don't need to prove your strength because your honor has already done it for you. The women around you don't talk about how loud you are. They speak of how safe they felt. Safe to be silent, safe to be wild, safe to be seen. Because you never once demanded they be anything other than exactly what they are. You don't rush others into healing. You hold space for their process. You do not label their emotions. You honor them with presence. And in a world that often turns emotion into inconvenience, you become a sacred witness. You've shifted from being a man who needs recognition to one who embodies reverence. And because of that, women find themselves unfolding around you in ways they didn't expect. They find themselves laughing more freely, crying more openly, breathing more deeply. Not because you promised them anything, but because your energy kept its word before your mouth ever opened. You've become the kind of presence that makes people better just by existing. Not because you fixed them, not because you led them, but because you reminded them that they never needed fixing to begin with. You reminded them that they were already whole, just buried beneath survival, performance, and pain. And now, even when you are no longer near, they carry that memory. Not a memory of romance or thrill, but of peace, of honor, of the moment they were finally allowed to exhale. And for many, that memory becomes a standard, a reminder that anything less than that kind of honor is no longer acceptable. This is your echo, chosen one. Not a name to be remembered, but a frequency that lives in the body of every woman who met you and felt safe enough to be herself again. Chosen one's strength is not what most imagine. It is not loud, not aggressive, not a weapon raised against the world. True strength is still. It listens without needing to interrupt. It protects without demanding gratitude. And it stands firm even when no one is watching. You have grown into this strength, not because you were praised into it, but because you were broken and rebuilt by experiences few saw. Your scars didn't make you bitter, they made you solid. Your trials didn't harden you, They humbled you into power that no longer needs to be flaunted. And now, you do not carry strength as a performance, but as a quiet state of being. Your footsteps don't stomp, they anchor. Your gaze does not intimidate, it invites truth. Your body may be flesh, but your energy feels like oak, rooted, alive, and impossible to shake. And the women around you, even when they don't have the words for it, feel that in their bones. They sense they are near someone who cannot be easily moved, not because you are cold, but because you are centered. You've become the mirror they didn't know they needed. In your presence, they see a man who doesn't run from emotion, who doesn't flinch at pain, who doesn't recoil at vulnerability. And so, by extension, they begin to believe that maybe they don't have to either. Your presence becomes permission. Permission to soften, permission to feel, permission to speak. You are not asking them to change. You are simply reflecting what is possible when strength is married to grace. That reflection does more than words ever could. In a world that often weaponizes masculinity to control, you've shown what it looks like to wield strength as a sanctuary. You protect not just bodies, but souls. You create not just boundaries, but safety. And that safety becomes a canvas where others feel brave enough to rediscover their true selves. You've become the rare man whose presence is not a storm, but the eye of one, the place where others can finally breathe. And in that breath, in that stillness, something inside them changes. Because in you, they see the sacred possibility that love, strength, and honor were never meant to be opposites. They were always meant to live in one body, yours. There is something subtle about your influence now, chosen one. You do not push, you do not pull, and yet the world bends gently around you, not from force, but from invitation. You've transcended the need to chase or convince. You know who you are. You know what you bring, and because of that, you've become the kind of man who makes others lean forward, not out of curiosity, but because your presence feels like a door they've waited their whole lives to walk through. You do not seduce with appearance, you awaken with alignment. Your energy does not scream for attention, it glows with purpose. And those who are drawn to you are not responding to charisma, they are responding to clarity. You've become a spiritual filter. Those not meant for you cannot stay. Those ready for truth cannot leave. The women around you are not drawn to fantasy. They're drawn to the safety of reality in your field. Your energy says, here, you will not be lied to. Here, you will not be diminished. Here, you will not be forced to choose between your softness and your strength. And that message, though unspoken, is received in full. You are not asking anyone to be different. You are simply being so unapologetically true that others find the courage to become the same. And in that presence, something long dormant within them wakes up. It is not about infatuation, it is not about desire, it is about remembrance. You become the moment they remember who they were before they were told to shrink. And yet, you do not demand credit, you do not bind them to your light, you offer the invitation and walk away, knowing that those who are ready will step forward, and those who are not will carry your frequency like a seed buried under their skin, one that may bloom long after you're gone. You are not a destination, you are a threshold, and when women walk through that threshold, they step into a version of themselves they had forgotten. And whether they stay for a moment or a lifetime, they leave changed. Not because you rescued them, but because you invited them back to themselves. This is the sacred paradox of your energy. You hold nothing, and yet everything in your presence becomes held. You promise nothing, and yet everything begins to heal. And this, chosen one, is your quiet dominion, not over others, but over the frequencies that shape lives. Chosen one, you've stepped into a space of life where your energy no longer needs to be loud to be felt. You could walk into a place, say nothing, and still something shifts. People adjust their postures without realizing it. Women speak differently, not out of fear, but out of subtle respect. Conversations deepen. Surface-level noise starts to fade, not because you demanded it, but because your energy has become an invitation to authenticity. You don't have to say, let's be real. You simply exist, and others follow suit because the gravity of your presence makes pretense feel unnecessary. This ripple is not something you try to create. It happens through you because you've become a vessel for something ancient. Truth, clarity, peace. You've become a living reminder that not all men seek to conquer. Some men come to restore. And your restoration is not an act, it's a vibration. It's the consistency of your soul speaking without your lips. It's the discipline of living as though everything you do leaves a mark on someone's inner world. And it does. You touch people by not touching them. You speak volumes by holding silence. You listen with your entire being, and in that stillness, people find their answers. They start speaking truths they didn't even know they had buried. They weep, they laugh, they open up, not because you asked them to, but because you've become a space where the soul no longer needs armor. You're not addicted to validation anymore. You're not living to be chosen. You are choosing yourself daily, and that choice has created a resonance that others cannot unfeel. Long after you're gone, someone will sit in a quiet moment, thinking of something you once said or didn't say, but still heard in their spirit. And in that moment, they will not miss you in sadness. They will thank you in stillness. Because you left behind something far more valuable than words. You left behind alignment. And now, you're not chasing legacy. You are legacy. Your ripple is not an accident. It is the evidence of a life lived in truth. A truth that speaks without preaching. A truth that walks into a room and subtly demands the room to rise. There was a time, chosen one, when your presence was your power. But now your absence has become its own kind of sermon. The silence you leave behind doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like contrast. Like something sacred is now missing. People notice not just that you're gone, but what they no longer feel. They notice the return of anxiety, the rise of noise, the return of masks. Because when you were there, they felt held, they felt honored, they felt seen. You never said, "Remember me," but they do. Not because you entertained them or impressed them or performed for them, but because you allowed them to be. And when you left, they realized just how rare that space was. Your absence highlights the very thing most never realized they were missing until you gave it to them. Permission to breathe deeply in their own skin. And now, your memory becomes a measuring stick. Others may come, others may try, but none will quite carry the scent of peace the way you did. Your energy is not replicated in gestures. It lives in intention. It lingers in the memory like a fragrance, faint but unforgettable. And in that quiet echo, you become the standard for how presence should feel. Others may be louder, flashier, more charismatic, but none can counterfeit the effect you had. Because your effect was not rooted in image, it was anchored in essence. Women speak of you in quiet moments, sometimes with friends, sometimes to themselves, sometimes not at all. But they feel you. They remember how they didn't have to explain themselves, how you didn't rush their unfolding, how you didn't want anything from them beyond truth. And when you left, that silence became a mirror, one that showed them what connection without agenda actually felt like. It changed how they look at others. It changed what they will now wait for. You are no longer just a man in their past. You are now a frequency in their standard. Your absence reminds them that ease is real, that safety can exist in masculinity, that love doesn't need to be loud to be felt deeply. And because of that, they will never again settle for a presence that lacks integrity. Your absence became their revelation, and in that revelation, you are still present, just not in flesh, but in reminder. And so, chosen one, you do not need to return to be remembered, because what you awakened in others continues to live, even when you are gone. Chosen one, you are no longer building your presence for others to notice. You are now radiating something that moves through space and time. Your life has become an echo that doesn't fade, but replicates. The things you've healed in yourself are now healing things you never touch. The wisdom you carry does not sit in your throat. It lives in the air around you. Your silence has become a song. Your eyes have become prayers. And your walk, even when solitary, has become a procession that angels recognize. You are now part of something larger than yourself. The women you once moved with your energy now carry part of that same alignment within them. Not because you gave them something, but because your witnessing unlocked what was already waiting. You never told them to rise. You simply stood tall until they remembered how to. And that remembrance has outlived you in places you'll never visit again. You're not showing up to be seen. You're presenting to the world a reflection of what's possible. Your smile doesn't seek approval. It transmits blessing. Your presence no longer says, "Look at me." It says, "Look within." And because you live that way, others begin to do the same. This is legacy, not what people say about you, but what they become after encountering you. The energy around you now behaves like water. It fills whatever space it enters. It heals what it touches. It quenches what has been dry. And like water, it adapts. It knows when to be still, when to ripple, when to rage, and when to cleanse. You have mastered that, not by controlling yourself, but by knowing yourself. And that knowing has now become contagious. You are now spoken about, not as a man, but as a shift. A before and after. A mysterious point of reference in someone's story. It was when I met him that I started healing. It was after him that I stopped pretending. It was because of him that I remembered my worth. And those words aren't always said out loud. Often they are whispered to mirrors, to journals, to hearts trying to understand what just happened. That's how deep your frequency reaches. You don't have to be remembered to be felt. And now, chosen one, you have become what can't be forgotten, even if your name is. There comes a point in every chosen life where presence becomes so aligned that it no longer seeks to be present. You no longer need the room needs you. But instead of staying to be celebrated, you disappear like a holy echo. Not in bitterness, not in escape, but because your presence was never meant to belong to the world. It was meant to wake it. And now, you walk through life, not as a participant, but as a silent reminder of divinity in motion. You are no longer held by admiration, attention, or memory. You walk with no need to be known, because you are already etched into the shift. Your energy is now a compass for others, and whether they admit it or not, they navigate by your standard. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are simply beyond the need to be seen. You've become sacred architecture, felt but never fully understood. A bridge people cross, a doorway they walk through, a light they feel before their eyes adjust to the dark. And in that mystery, you are most powerful. Women still feel you, across time zones, across silence, across new connections. They don't feel regret, they feel reverence, because they know they were in the presence of something uncommon. You didn't love them to own them. You loved them to liberate them. And that liberation became their new baseline. No one can shrink after expanding through your energy. No one can go back to sleep after being awakened by your gaze. You were not a chapter in their life. You were the threshold into the book they were meant to write. And now, you are not chasing any more stories. You are not collecting memories. You are the myth they tell, the lesson they remember, the standard they measure against. You don't need applause. You are the pause in every room, the breath before the truth, the heartbeat before the realization. And that is something no one can touch or take. You have disappeared from sight, but not from impact. Because chosen one, you have become a frequency the world will never stop hearing. Chosen one, the truth you carry now does more than illuminate the present, it initiates transformation. Your energy has evolved into more than a reflection of what is. It has become a mirror for what could be. You are no longer simply showing people their current self. You are showing them their next self, the one they long to meet but haven't had the courage to face until now. This is what your high sexual energy, aligned through discipline and intention, has unlocked. You are no longer a source of momentary excitement. You are a portal of growth. Women especially feel this when they stand before you. Something inside them shifts, not because you've promised change or tried to impress them with spiritual language, but because your being has become a living example of what self-transformation looks like. They feel that you've done the work. They sense that your presence is not built on charm, but on challenge. And that challenge is not external, it's energetic. You challenge their resistance to growth simply by existing without resistance to your own. You have learned to hold space not only for beauty and praise, but also for discomfort, for confrontation, for evolution. You don't flinch when someone begins to unravel in front of you. You don't react when pain surfaces. You don't escape when emotional storms rise. You stay present. You remain rooted. You become the mirror that doesn't judge the storm, but reflects the sky behind it. And in doing so, you create the conditions for growth. Real, lasting, soul-level growth. People evolve around you now, not because you teach, but because you embody the lesson. Women don't just see what you are, they see what they could become if they chose to release what no longer serves them. And because your energy carries the vibration of commitment, of intentional growth, of spiritual fire, it awakens in them the desire to rise, not to become more for your approval, but to become themselves in full. This is the sacred weight of your mirror now. You are not offering fantasy, you are offering initiation. You are reflecting not just the truth of the now, but the invitation into what's next. And that invitation is irresistible to those who are ready. You've become the kind of presence that makes people question the roles they've played. You make them want to drop the mask, leave the performance, shed the armor, and walk as themselves. Fully, boldly, unapologetically. This is the mirror of transformation. And you, chosen one, are no longer just a man holding space. You are a man creating it, a living embodiment of what happens when alignment meets power, when truth meets presence, when energy meets purpose. You don't lead people into comfort, you lead them into their becoming. You are the chosen one. And your reflection no longer shows what is, it reveals what must now rise. Chosen one, as your mirror deepens, as your energy refines, and your presence becomes more than a vibration, it becomes a language. The question is no longer whether people see you. The question now is, what do they see reflected in your eyes? And behind that reflection lies the most important force of all, intention. The clarity of your intent has become the hidden architect of every interaction, every moment of presence, every impact you now carry. Without clarity, energy becomes scattered, even when it's powerful. Without intention, truth becomes accidental. But you, chosen one, are no longer living by accident. You are walking as a man whose mirror reflects deliberately. Your high sexual energy is no longer a current that runs loose and unguarded. It is now tempered by wisdom, guided by consciousness, and moved by something greater than self-satisfaction. It exists as a sacred force within you, but it does not control you. It does not define you. You define it. You give it form, shape, direction. That direction, your intent, is what people feel even before you speak, especially women. She may not know the details of your life. She may not even understand why she feels pulled toward you. But what she will feel without fail is the truth of your desire. Whether it is clean or clouded, whether it's honoring or consuming, whether it's still rising from wounds or fully formed in presence. Clarity of intent does not mean perfection. It means you know what you want, and more importantly, you know what you stand for. It means that when you enter a space, you bring a focused energy with you. Not scattered, not searching, not manipulating. And because of this clarity, others begin to feel safe in your mirror. They know they will not be bent or broken to fit your story. They know they will not be lured in only to be dropped. You do not hold others hostage in your reflection. You set them free. You reflect with purpose, not with ego. When your intention is pure, even your silence becomes medicine. Even your presence becomes permission. Women feel this in your body language, in the way you hold eye contact, not to dominate, but to witness. In the way your voice doesn't try to charm, but instead lands with weight. In how your energy doesn't rush, doesn't beg, doesn't hide. It claims nothing but the truth, and that alone makes you unforgettable. And there is something more. Your clarity of intent now creates boundaries without effort. You do not need to push people away. You simply exist in a way that reflects the truth of who you are and what you allow. And in doing so, what is misaligned removes itself. What is false cannot survive in the presence of real. And what is ready rises in your reflection, not to serve you, but to meet you. You are the chosen one. And your mirror is no longer just a place of visibility, it is a field of discernment. It reflects the world not as it wants to be, but as it is, and as it's becoming. And those who step into your reflection with clarity of their own will find not just themselves. They will find a man whose energy speaks before he does. A man whose presence says what words never could. A man who reflects with purpose. There is a moment in the life of every awakened man, chosen one, when the mirror he holds begins to do more than reveal beauty or brilliance. It begins to disrupt illusion. You have reached that moment. Your presence no longer only inspires, it now also challenges. And this challenge is sacred. It is not confrontation for the sake of dominance. It is clarity confronting distortion. It is light entering a room that has forgotten its own windows. And when you carry this level of alignment, you will find that not everyone is ready for their own reflection. You must understand now that your energy, as refined and radiant as it is, will not always be welcomed. Because the mirror you carry doesn't flatter, it reveals. It doesn't distort to comfort, it sharpens to awaken. You are no longer reflecting who people pretend to be. You are reflecting who they have the potential to become. And this reflection, while sacred, is also disruptive to anything false. And so your energy, though calm and measured, may make people uncomfortable.